All right, today we are going to be looking at some review for macroeconomics diagrams that will be helpful. I'm going to be going back and forth to the computer. Your focus is going to be here, specifically whether this is period 1 on Thursday or period 7 on Friday. You will be needing to show the teacher at least 8 macroeconomic diagrams. So feel free to stop this at any time. These are diagrams that will be pretty helpful to know for the AP examination. So to start with, as we go through these slides, I should say these are not my own, but somebody did a very nice job with them. One of the things that you're going to notice for both micro and macro, production possibility frontier shows opportunity cost. Okay, you end up with 2 distinct choices. This is what's possible. You cannot attain this, okay, unless you shift the production function out. This is inefficient. If you're on the curve, you're efficient. In order to get more of one thing, you have to give up something of something else. That is a classic opportunity cost. So in this case, robots, pizzas. If you've got this many robots, this many pizzas, to get to C, meaning you want more robots, you've got to give up some pizzas. All right, so you see a production possibility frontier shows a number of different things for macroeconomics and microeconomics. And those are some things right there. Opportunity cost, inefficiency, which is oftentimes unemployed resources, efficiency, as well as economic growth when the curve shifts. Right. Aggregate demand, aggregate supply. Do not be confused by the fact there's no long-run aggregate supply moving down. Look at what the labels say. And so essentially what you may get, you never know, you may get something that looks like this, and just the question is, what's the price level? What's the output? Okay, you'd want to put real GDP there, price level here. This is a little lazy, to be perfectly honest with you, for just putting P, but they did mark price level. Real domestic output, real GDP. Where aggregate supply and aggregate demand meet, that creates an average price level, and that creates output. When you add long-run aggregate supply, right, that helps us learn some things. This becomes then short-run aggregate supply. Sometimes economists do LRAS this way, aggregate supply in the long run. This could be aggregate supply in the short run. Essentially what you're looking at is a classic recessionary gap, right, where actual output is less than potential output. Right? So if you were asked for a recessionary gap, you would draw it where short-run aggregate supply and aggregate demand meet, create a price level, create an output that is to the left of potential output. Right, as you look at this, the next slide is going to be inflationary gap. I'm going to do this from here and just briefly say same type of thing as recessionary gap. An inflationary gap is to the right. The equilibrium is to the right. You can see the cursor, I think. Where Y1, actual output, is greater than potential output. That is a classic inflationary gap, okay, or beyond full employment. If you get asked to draw demand pull inflation, you can even have, if you want, okay, along an aggregate supply curve going here, demand pull, aggregate demand moves to the right along the short-run aggregate supply curve, pulling price level up. That is a classic both inflationary gap but also demand pull inflation. Cost push inflation then, some form of cost for factors of production goes up, short aggregate supply shifts to the left, pushing up prices. Oftentimes this is synonymous with stagflation. Your economy is stagnant. It might not be going down that much in terms of real GDP, but unemployment goes up because it's a recessionary gap, and you have a situation where price level goes up. Right. What does aggregate demand, aggregate supply show? You can pause this if you need to. It shows real GDP. Okay. The way it shows employment, unemployment is based upon whether we are operating at full employment or not, and price level. Okay. Aggregate demand curve is downward sloping. Okay. Essentially what you need to remember about this is average price level falls, people will purchase more of it. Okay. Money market. Okay. If you're asked to diagram a money market, okay, again, you want to make sure you have your labels correct. Okay. You've got quantity of money, okay, the price of money. But the price of money is an interest rate. You have a downward sloping demand curve for money. So in this case, the demand for money. Supply of money is always going to be vertical in a given moment of time. You only have so much money. Where they meet, that's what creates the interest rate. That is your money market diagram. Right, so how does this all work? Where you combine the things together. Okay, so let's say, for instance, a monetary policy calls for an increase in the money supply that moves along the demand curve for money, decreases your overall interest rate. Okay, as that happens, okay, because the interest rate, the price of money is going down, more people will borrow money to invest. So the investment demand, or demand for investments in C plus I plus G plus X, okay, the I part, demand for I is going up. What does that do? That shifts aggregate demand to the right. That's how they all fit together. Increasing the money supply will increase aggregate demand. That's classic monetary policy because it also decreases the interest rate. Loanable funds market also relates to the price of money, which is the interest rate. There's a certain amount of money that's been put into banks, so to speak. If you put money in a bank, that's a loanable fund for someone. There's a demand for those funds. There's a supply of those funds. If the bank is giving you a massive interest rate, a high one, a whole lot of people want to supply it. High one, not as many people demand it. Where they meet, it's your interest rate and the quantity of loanable funds that is available. So very quickly, we'll leave this here. You're going to be able to read this on the diagram, but we'll change the supply of loanable funds, us having more money, government saving money, businesses saving money. I don't know why the person that did this put this twice, an increase in foreigner savings, but that means people outside the country investing in the United States. Changes demand. We want to borrow money, like for houses. Businesses decide to invest more. People outside the country borrow from the United States, or government borrows. Okay? In other words, it has a budget deficit. They're borrowing from people in order to spend more than they're bringing in. That is what we would also call the crowding out effect. We haven't covered this actually as of yet while I'm doing this, but we will, and by next week you will be covering this. Foreign exchange market, the price of money in one currency in terms of another. So this is the dollar price of yen, the price for it, quantity of yen. There's a demand for that. There's a supply for that. Supply of yen, demand for yen. Okay, based in U.S. dollars. How much does it cost? There's a demand and supply where they meet. It's the quantity of yen that's in circulation and the price of that. If there is an increase in demand for yen by U.S. dollars, the price of yen in said U.S. dollars will go up. Okay, if there's a decrease in demand for yen in U.S. dollars, right, that would cause the price of yen in U.S. dollars to go down. Things that could cause that: people want to buy goods made in Japan more, people want to invest in Japan more from the United States. Right, so we would say the dollar is depreciating. Okay? In other words, if the demand for yen went up, okay, the price of yen goes up for the dollar, so the value of the dollar is worth less, okay, according to the yen. The term for that is to depreciate. If demand for yen comes down in U.S. dollars, maybe we're investing less, we're buying less Japanese products, it would appreciate. The value of the U.S. dollar would go up against the yen. One thing very quickly that we should remember, the foreign exchange market is 1-to-1. Okay? One country to another country. The U.S. dollar could be depreciating in this case against the yen, but appreciating against another currency. You always measure one currency against another. Phillips curve. Okay? They should have probably drawn the Phillips curve going below your average rate of inflation for deflation, but that's okay. Short run Phillips curve. The higher in the inflation, the lower the unemployment. Okay? As inflation comes down, unemployment goes up. All right? That's classic in the short run. This holds true in the short run unless we're talking about cost push inflation. The long run Phillips curve is simply the natural rate of unemployment. Okay? If the United States is at 5% unemployment, it doesn't matter in the long run what's going on with price level. We have the same level of unemployment, especially if there's an aggregate supply shift in the short run that will change our expectations for the Phillips curve and push it up to the right. That's how we ended up with stagflation. Unemployment staying the same or going up, and output and unemployment not changing. Again, Phillips curve, there's some things there that you can read. Short run is there's a trade-off between the two, inflation and unemployment. Long run, no. Stagflation, increase in unemployment and inflation. That's a problem in a society. And we could, if we saw decreases in inflation and unemployment, shift the short run Phillips curve to the left. An increase in aggregate supply would cause that. Two ways to show economic growth. Production possibility frontier shifts to the right. Long run aggregate supply curve shifts to the right. What could do that? More capital stock investment. Okay? More human capital investment. More technology, more quality, okay, of things. An increase in improvement in land, labor, capital, or enterprises. And finally, the circular flow model of everything. You are not going to be expected to remember this other than to think about everything if it's an island. Okay? If it's an island, you produce things, and so we could take out government, you could take out other countries, and just remember households. Okay? Households are the resources. Okay? Okay? They go into producing things, okay? And they produce things to get back to the household. That's our island that we initially start with.